Good day everyone. For today's video, I'm gonna share our analysis with regards to hair and fiber under the microscope. But first, let us know what is hair and fiber. So, hair and fiber. Hair is the outermost covering of the different parts of the body, with the exception of palm of the hand and sole of the foot. Fiber is the smallest single unit forming the basic of a textile yarn. A yarn is composed of numerous fibers which are spun, twisted, or drawn together to prepare the unit for knitting or weaving. So its values and significance of hair and fiber as an evidence. The value of hair and fiber as evidence in the criminal cases has been well recognized and has been proven an essential aid to the investigator. Hair and fiber is the most common type of trace evidence. Hair transfers may occur during any physical contact of the perpetrator with a victim as well as in fibers. Thus, the examination of this associative evidence is useful in the crimes of violence where physical contact have occurred. Examination of hair and fiber. By examination of the structural parts of the hair, especially its inner aspect, it can lead to the determination of racial differences, whether the hair is coming from the human or coming from an animal. So part of the body where the hair originated, how was it removed, naturally or forcible, whether how the hair was cut or burned, determine the type of fiber. Also, if there's transfers of fiber on a victim's clothing, it can pinpoint the perpetrator. So, the purpose of examination to determine whether the hair is questioned, originated from an animal or human being, and the comparison of questioned and known hairs. To ascertain whether two or more individuals could have come in contact or whether one or more individuals could have come in contact with the object. So let's proceed to the actual examination of the hair and fibers. So these are the hair and fiber samples that we collected and ready for the examination. So first is human, horse, pig, rabbit, goat, sheep, cat, dog. So we have a hard time finding the cuticle of every hair sample, so that's why we're only focusing in finding the type of medulla as well as observing its cortex. So the first hair to examine is the human hair. Human hair cortex is denser than its medulla, and the medulla that is present is the solid. With regards to its root, we're expecting that it will form a bulb, but through the examination, the bulb is cut into half. That leads to the conclusion that the hair was plucked using a force. And as we observe, the tip is very pointy and the medulla is slowly fading as it's reaching the tip. Aside from forcibly removed hair, there is also burned, stretched, and naturally fallen hair, which have different characteristics and alterations of the structures. First is burned hair, where the particles of the tip that is burned is very fragile that leads to separation in a fan shape. Also, its cuticle will obviously destroy as well as its medulla and cortex. In naturally fallen hair, it have similarities to freshly pulled hair, except to the bulb that's still intact. Stretched hair turn the hair in curl and also reduce its length. In its structure, the medulla is still inside, but it turns similar to the cat that the medulla is like a bubble solid formation. Hair is from an animal hair, which is the horse. If you observe properly, you can notice the cuticle on the left side forming a stack of crowns. So we can say that the cuticle present is coronal. The cortex of the horse is white and it's very thick, while the medulla is very small, forming an interruptive line. The horse is supposed to have a long hair, but as we observe, the tip is cut. Maybe it is cut by pulling or scissored, and the horse root is absent. Next hair sample is from a pig. In early observation, pig's cuticle is very clear and its form is imbricate. But due to eagerness to capture a clear cuticle, I tried to put the solution, but the result just disappointed me that the cuticle was being dissolved by the solution. Its medulla is thick, same with the thickness of the cortex, but its type is fragmented due to the uneven space. Its root resembles a closed umbrella, pointed, long, and forming a pointed oblong. Next animal here is coming from a rabbit. Rabbit's cuticle is not visible, but its medulla is thicker than the cortex. Even though it doesn't have color in the picture because of the brightness, but still it is observable. That makes us conclude its medulla is continuous. Its root resembles a finger that have the same way with its shaft. And also, we cannot say that it is being stretched because, as you can see, the bulb is clean and very clear, and there's no also tissue attached on it. So next hair animal is from the goat. Goat's bulb is lightly stretched with small amount of tissue in the upper part. Then absence of medulla is very noticeable. All I saw is just the color layer of the cuticle, which is black, and it is spinous, which is not visible in the picture, and the cortex was color white and very thick. Next hair animal is from sheep. The hair sample of the sheep have no root because according to my member, the hair was cut by a scissor because the hair of the sheep is so hard to pull that makes the appearance of sample. Its cuticle is hard to determine in the picture, but under my observation in the microscope, the cuticle type is coronal. Its type of medulla is fragmented due to the uneven space and length of the medulla. The medulla's width is bigger than its cortex. Next type of animal is from a cat. Among the other animals, cat is what I've liked the most due to its visible hair structure. The black in the outer layer is the cuticle, the large solid and like bubbles is medulla, and the cortex represents the thin white around the medulla rather. The cat's medulla resembles a bubbles but in a solid formation. So that's why I can conclude that its type of medulla is the continuous medulla. Last hair sample is from a dog. The dog's root is very small and pointed. Its medulla is different because the part that embedded on its skin is having a fragmented type, but the part that above the skin is solid medulla. Cuticle is not very clear in the picture, but as we can see under the microscope, it is imbricate cuticle. So let's proceed to the different kind of fiber. We have yarn, nylon, and white silk cotton. So yarn as our first sample is a fiber in the form of a loosely twisted collection of fibers, as of a hemp of which rope is made. It also refers to a thread made of natural or synthetic fibers in use for knitting and weaving. Under the microscope, as I've observed, in its center I saw every fiber that is twisted to form a yarn. In its fiber structure is cortex and medulla only. Regardless of the color of the yarn, the cuticle of the yarn is much thicker than its cortex. Cuticle as the dark red and white as the cortex. Next fiber is the nylon. Nylon is a generic designation for a family of synthetic polymers composed of polyamides. Nylon is silk-like thermoplastic generally made from petroleum that can be melt processed into fibers, films, or shapes. Despite the colorless appearance of the nylon, the cortex is still visible and there's no type of cuticle, somehow full of scratches. Next sample fiber is a white silk cotton that came from the white silk cotton tree. The fibers are almost pure cellulose, buoyant, impervious to water, and have a low thermal conductivity, but they do not lend themselves to spinning, called kapok in Asia. The fibers are used for insulation, padding in sleeping, bags and life preservers, and for stuffing mattresses and pillows. As what I've observed under the microscope, cotton have a very small and thin fibers which do not have structures due to the reason that they are tangled or somehow spun. It resembles the structures of jeans. So conclusion. Therefore, we conclude that even the smallest thing that its own structure, just like the hairs that having cuticle, medulla, and cortex, these structures persuade me that the cuticle and the medulla can help you to distinguish different kind of animals. Also, by observing the medulla and cortex, it can help me to distinguish whether the owner is animal or human by basing on its medullary index. Under the microscope, I can now tell whether the hair was pulled by force or fall naturally. And also whether if it cut, and regarding about the fibers, I can now tell what is natural from the synthetic. Because natural are more prone to spun and twist unlike the synthetic, even though they already form a thread, but each of these fibers are still not twisted, since we can still observe their structure like its cortex and cuticle. That would end our hair and fiber analysis. Thank you.